$25 million in taxpayer money misused. It's an explosive news story our media partner, the San Francisco Standard, has published. They have a new article exposing the city of San Francisco for doling out money to delinquent charities that have been blocked from receiving state funding. Joining us live now with much more on this is Josh Kane, senior reporter for the Standard. Josh, thanks for joining us to talk about this story.
Hi, Kristen. Pleasure to be with you.
Okay, so I saw your report. It notes that San Francisco paid $25 million last year to charities that had already had their nonprofit status revoked, suspended, or labeled delinquent by the Attorney General's office. For the public, what exactly does that mean?
Well, basically, when the Attorney General's office says that a nonprofit has been suspended, revoked, or tagged as delinquent, that basically means that these organizations are now barred from receiving money that's designated for nonprofits or spending that money. They also have other restrictions on them when it comes to retaining staff and actually soliciting contributions from private donors.
All right, so they're not supposed to get money. I don't know if that delinquent label has to, when we hear the word, we think, oh, they did something really terrible. Could it be something as simple as just bad paperwork that needs to be refiled, or is it something serious, like you defrauded people?
Yeah, absolutely. There's levels to non-compliance. Revoked or suspended is absolutely the worst. Delinquent can mean a lot of different things. It could be you just missed paying a fee, you filled out a piece of paperwork wrong. But what we found is that actually there are 139 nonprofits in San Francisco that fit those three categories. 132 of them are delinquent, but some of them are missing forms that go back a substantial period of time. Some of them have multiple issues on different fronts. And when you add up the money that has gone to these organizations, you mentioned the $25 million that was paid at the beginning of the fiscal year, which would have been last July. That number is now ballooned to $90 million roughly. And the city has $300 million worth of contracts going forward with these out of compliance nonprofits.
Okay, so these checks keep going out, and you share some data with us from the San Francisco Comptroller's office that shows where exactly that money went. So let's take a look. Walk us through who got what.
Yeah, so right now, basically, you've got nonprofits that usually focus in dealing with major crises: homelessness, housing, drug addiction, education, healthcare. And these organizations have gotten, some of them, hundreds of thousands, others get tens of millions. We actually wanted to focus our first story, because we will be writing more about this. Our first story focuses on the city departments and the lack of oversight that they've had and the negligence they've shown in just doing a basic check of compliance. And the departments that are giving away the most money include the Homelessness and Supportive Housing Department, which gave almost $88 million, or has contracts, I should say, worth that much. You've got the Department of Public Health with more than $50 million. You've got the Human Services Agency with also tens of millions. The list kind of goes on. There's 18 total departments that have apparently not been doing their due diligence.
You mentioned due diligence and oversight. Is that how the city explained it to you? I assume you asked them how they could let this happen.
Yeah, well, there's a range of reactions. I will say that the city attorney's office and the controller's office were not obviously pleased with this, and they say that they're going to aggressively make sure that they get these nonprofits into compliance, or obviously we shouldn't be giving taxpayer money to them. When I talked to the mayor's office, they said they're going to look at the guidance given by those two previous agencies I mentioned and kind of see what's there. Some of them have said, oh, this isn't something that's a major deal. Some of them have just little paperwork issues. By law, they're not supposed to get taxpayer money that's designated for nonprofits. So you could say it's not a big deal, but the AG's office, the Attorney General, was very clear that none of these organizations that fall into these three categories are legally allowed to get money or spend that money.
So besides being out money, does the city lose out in some other ways? I mean, could they be penalized for, giving out the money when the AG said no?
Yeah, we're still waiting on comment from the Attorney General's office on whether there could be penalties. They can levy civil and criminal penalties against organizations that do this. When it comes to the city, I think that really comes back to whether we feel like the city is doing a good job in stewarding our taxpayer money. We've seen homelessness get worse. We've seen issues with drug addiction, overdoses get worse over recent years. Housing is obviously a major crisis. Education is viewed as performing very poorly by city residents. And so really when it comes to the city side, I think, based on the reports that we've got so far, and we're going to continue to report, people are going to have to make their own judgments on whether or not San Francisco is really actually making the best use of our taxpayer dollars when giving to these nonprofits.
All right, Josh Kane, the first part of your series looking at how the city is spending our money, taxpayer money, and I appreciate you coming on to share that with us. We're looking forward to the rest.